Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a step-by-step Lightroom editing video for you. We're going to be editing this picture of orange juice being poured. And this is going to be part of a two-part series where I show you how to edit in Lightroom, and then in the next step we're going to show you how to compose a stop-motion video using Photoshop and these pictures that we're going to edit in Lightroom. Today it's all about Lightroom. We're going to go through just basic edits, and then I'm also going to do a brief introduction on radial filters and how you can use those in your images. And I hope you enjoy the content. I hope it's useful most of all, and I hope it's very clear and easy to follow. So if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to look out for that part 2, and then also feel free to like the video, and let's get into it.
Okay, so here we have all the images open that we are going to edit today. As you can see, I made just a collection for them just to have them readily available, and we have about 20 or so images that we're going to edit. The shot itself is not great just when you start with it. It's a very wide angle that I used, and because of my situation setup that I have, I couldn't extend the background much further. So this picture is going to be quite cropped in and is going to be a lot closer up to the orange juice than you see here. So we're going to work on cropping it, work on brightening it up, and we're also going to work on the white balance to make sure that it's not appearing as warm as it is right now when we have the final edit. So let's get into it. So the first thing I always do is go all the way to the bottom of our settings over here to the lens correction, and I always enable profile corrections. You can just see what that did by hitting the backspace button, and it just corrects some of the distortion that each lens has on its camera. Each lens has a different amount of distortion, and you can just see how much better that makes the image automatically. That's the first thing I do, and then I usually go in and crop it next just because I know what kind of crop I want. I always go for the 4/5 or 8:10 ratio just because that's the Instagram ratio that is used. And we're going to take it in on the sides to kind of cut off that bit that you see over there. I put this pot here specifically so we would get more real estate over on this side, just because otherwise we'd have that sharp cut off and it would be a bit too narrow. And I often use just this side where you can see the preview to kind of guess what my image is going to look like. You can tell kind of from here, but sometimes it's just easier to look in over here for that. So just personal preference, I'm going to bring it in a bit closer because I really want that orange juice to be the star. And you can see the glass isn't completely straight up and down, so we're going to move that as well to about there, I think is what I like. So then we close the crop tool, and then that's what we have to work with right now. So that's, you can see the lens correction even affects it when it's just that small of an image compared to what we had before. So I always crop it before I go in and edit the rest of my picture, just to make sure I'm not, editing corners, brightening up corners that I'm not even going to end up using. I know some people say don't crop until you're done and nearly finished with the entire editing process, but it's just a personal preference of mine. So then we're going to go in and fix the white balance. So just right here, I'm going to take the blues down quite a bit. Maybe around 4,500-ish. Around right there. And then we're going to take the purples down as well, just a little bit. Let's take that up just a tiny bit. We're going to mess around with the colors a little bit more and see what we get. So after the white balance, I like to go down to my tone curve right here. And mine, I have these adjustment panels on it. I usually take the lights and the darks up quite a lot. So I usually start with darks, and this picture I'm going to go for more of a faded look just because otherwise it's going to be a bit too harsh of colors with the orange juice and whatnot. So I'm going to take the darks up to about 50, and I'm going to take the lights up to about 40. And see, that already brightened up our image quite a lot. Here's the before and there's the after, so you can see just the colors are all a lot more natural. The background actually looks white. And it's not super dark and stuff like it was before. I am going to take the shadows up as well just to soften those colors out a bit more before we add more contrast when we go to the top section of our editing panel, probably to about like 17. And then the highlights I usually take down a little bit just because I end up brightening the whites, and I don't want those to be too bright or too intense. So I lower the highlights, and here's the difference there. So then after that, we are going to go back up, and I go to the Dehaze Clarity and Texture section next. So Dehaze I usually add to every single picture. It kind of just adds a bit more contrast and sharpens up your image in general. I'm going to take it up to about 15 today. And then clarity, you want to be really careful with clarity, otherwise it can really make your image look very pixelated and just very off. I sometimes add texture. I usually don't, just because I find that there's a lot of texture communicated regardless if you add texture or not, and that can sometimes be a bit too overkill. So just be very careful with that. I always raise the blacks a bit just because it makes them softer, makes the image less intense with those dark colors. So today I'm going to bring that up to about 30. And then the whites I bring up quite a lot as well. Today I'm going to bring that up to about 40. So there's the completely brightened image basically. We're going to mess with the highlights and shadows next. Shadows we're going to bring down because we've faded out our image quite a bit, and these are just some more subtle changes. We're going to take it to like about 10. And then we're going to bring the highlights down as well, just because those are a bit too bright in some places for me. And that's going to be about 14 or 15. So there's that. And now that I'm looking at almost our finished image, I'm going to go in and kind of color correct, kind of see what I don't like, and do some small adjustments from there. So I have this plant in the back, and I really like the plant being there, but I think it's just a bit too green because I want the focus to be on the orange, and that's just a bit too bright green for me. So I'm going to go down to the HSL/color panel, and I'm on the HSL tab, and here you have the hue, saturation, and luminance. I'm just going to go into saturation and take the green saturation down a bit just to kind of fade that out. I don't want to darken it or anything like that, but I'm just going to take it down a bit, and that makes it a bit less intense. Just takes your focus off of that more so, and more so onto the orange juice. And then I'm also going to go in and sharpen up the image just with the sharpening down here. I'm just going to take it up to about 70, and then I'm going to add a little bit of masking as well to soften that out. And then I think the image is looking pretty good so far. The last thing I want to do is add a radial filter, and what radial filters do is they just add change to a circular area that you identify with the filter. So what I want to do is kind of make the orange juice stand out a bit more from the background, just because I want the background to be a bit more blurry. Because this image was shot with a lower aperture, you already have the orange juice kind of more so in focus than the background, but I still want to emphasize that a bit more since I did have to shoot these quite close together. It's not as faded as I would like it to be. So I'm going to just add a radial filter around the cup of orange juice. Maybe about like that. Bring it down, see how it sizes up, and that's about perfect for me. And as you can see, it brightened up the area around it because there's automatic settings from the last time I used it. So we're going to feather out the filter to start with. I usually feather about 80 or so just because I want it to look really natural, and I don't want it to be a harsh line of edits from here onwards. I'd rather it blend a bit easier. So once you see how those blend and how those feather out, you can kind of adjust your filter a bit. I'm gonna just make it a bit wider. And then if you wanted the filter to go on the inside and sharpen up the actual cup, you could always hit invert, and that transfers it to the inside. And then you can edit from there, but we're going to have it on the outside background area today. And I'm going to go into the texture, clarity, and dehaze section. And well, first of all, I'm going to get rid of these default settings that I have. You can just double click those to set them back to 0. And then with the texture, clarity, and dehaze, I'm going to take them all down about 15 or so to kind of blur out the background a little bit. And then once you're done with that, you can just close and that will save your filter right there. And so that is the finished edited picture that we have. And now I have all these pictures that I want to edit, and in order to get them all edited the exact same with crop and everything, because I will be using these pictures for a stop motion and you want them all in the same exact position. As you can see, I already have this one selected down here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold the command button and click on the rest of these so it selects all of them at the same time. And then now that I have all of these pictures selected, I'm going to go over to sync right here. And what this does is syncs all of our settings, and I have all of the check boxes checked for now. If I check none, I could just choose, which ones I wanted to sync, and it would just sync those ones. I'm going to check all because I want the exact same settings for all of these pictures, including the radial filters in those positions, just so everything stays the exact same. So now I'm going to sync it. And as you can see, it's finished syncing, and it will be applied to all these pictures down here, and they will be the exact same. And obviously it takes a while sometimes for it all to load, but then once you have that done, you can just come to the top up here, go to File, go to Export, and then you can export your pictures. Just hit export and it will export all those files to where you wanted them, and then we can go into editing them in Photoshop. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them below for me.
So that's it for the Lightroom editing portion. I hope it was easy for you to follow, and I hope it all made sense. Feel free to rewatch it if you need to. I hope everything was clear. And that really is just my step-by-step process that I go through with every single image that I end up editing in Lightroom, and especially my series of images that I have. I edit them all the exact same way basically, and I just adjust for each image. I never use any presets or anything like that because I feel like each one needs a bit more of a unique edit, just because the lighting situations and everything differs so much. So like I said, this is part of a 2-part series, so keep an eye out for our Photoshop edit, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.